My name is BlackJupiter and welcome back to Agent Random. Last time in our quest to find every Easter egg in the World Ends With You series, we dug up all of the Easter eggs from the original game. 14 years later, we're here to dig up every reference and hidden goodie in its anime adaptation, The World Ends With You, the animation. So of course, spoilers for the anime and its source material. Once again, still no spoilers for the second game. If you're one of those people that the legend spoke of, who's only seen the anime and hasn't played the game, don't worry. I'll explain most of the references to the game in extra detail. That said, I won't be covering any Easter eggs that were carried over from the game. So things like the meanings behind character designs or noise form names won't be covered here since I did that in the first video. Give it a watch if you're curious. Once again, we'll be taking a look at the English version, as in the one that Funimation made where they speak English words out loud with their mouths. This version has extra Easter eggs added in referencing the English release of the game specifically. I'm sure it's the same in Japanese, and if I ever suddenly wake up with the ability to speak the language, I'll make a video on that one. But until then, y'all are free to leave a comment if you think that version of the show has any unique details that I'm missing out here. But before we really get into it, let's clean up some leftovers from last time. Since that video released, there was a trend in hell where people posted useless trivia about their favorite franchises. The NTWEWY Awards account posted one, and then everybody came out of the woodworks and tweeted about a bunch of Easter eggs, some of which I never covered the first time around. So let's go over some of those real fast and then we'll dive into the anime. If you really just want to get to the anime stuff and only the anime stuff, then go to the timestamp that's on your screen. First up, according to @RoxasProSkater, Neku's tampon of an MP3 player is based off the NWS200 series from 2006. @Lapinparka says that if you obtain the Her Stuffed Animal item in New Game Plus, which is just Mr. Mew, the item description clarifies that Shiki uses psychomancy to control the doll and not psychokinesis. Psychomancy, according to dictionary.com, is the occult communication between souls or spirits. Feel free to make your own conclusions there. Next up is Joshua's level 3 fusion. Normally, fusions operate off of a damage multiplier. Shiki and Beat's level 3 uses a ×20 multiplier, but Joshua's uses a ×99.9 multiplier and is apparently so busted that it can overflow the game and wind up healing enemies. That info is sourced from @SpookyWee and @DailyJoshNeku. @DuskNeko says that in Solo Remix, Coco's Secret Reaper shop is found in the bottom left corner of the scramble, right here. I don't have footage of it because it's still not worth $18. In A New Day, this is the same location that you can find the boss noise version of Dissonance Taper. Is there a connection there? Almost certainly not, but you and I both know that I love to overthink Coco. @ZetaTrolled found a thought fragment in the game from a person who has spotted Reapers going to and from the Yuji before, even citing this happening in Utagawa in particular, so there's a chance that this person has spotted either Sho or Joshua coming or going on their way to bully Neku. And lastly, Out of Your Vector informs the internet that Lucky Star and Tin Pin Rocker are both official Death March merchandise. Alright, now for the Easter eggs that you actually clicked on the video for. Let's begin the animation. Episode 1's gonna be a doozy. And by that I mean we're gonna be talking about it for a while. This episode is called The Reaper's Game, which is also the name of the game's first chapter. The show begins with Neku waking up in the scramble just like the game. But as he does, we see a number of familiar faces from later in the show go by. Futoshi, Ai, Mina, Soda, and Now all walk by Neku with Makoto joining them later. Yes, I'm saying Makoto instead of Makoto, Funimation, try and stop me. Just like in the game, there are 13 brands that people care about in this town. Right here at the start, Tiger Punks, Lapin Angelique, Pegaso, Jupiter the Monkey, Musradis, Pavo Real, Gatito, and Hip Snake are all popular in the scramble, with the rest also appearing throughout the show. The scene then shows Neku get run over by a truck only for it to go straight through him. This is a recreation of an unused beta scene from the original DS game, and it's really cool that the scene was finally able to be included in the series. When Neku receives his mission mail, he receives it on a smartphone. That's because the animation takes place a little further into the future than the game. Just like the game, the exact date is kinda pointless to try and get and wouldn't fully make sense anyway. Like, there's no way that Neku has a smartphone but also an MP3 player from 2006, right? Surely I won't eat these words later and try to figure out the date down to the month anyway. Pointless detail, but Neku's timer totally starts at 59 minutes and 30 seconds instead of the full 60 minutes. I'm telling you, this game is rigged in more ways than usual this time. Then a certain Easter egg from the game is carried over. For a second, you can see Joshua chilling in the background right over there. Joshua just can't resist more screen time. Soon after, we get to meet Shiki, and fun fact, Shiki is voiced by Morgan Garrett in this show. That is not an Easter egg in the slightest, but while scripting this video, I was also watching Nichijou, in which she voices Yuko, and I cannot unhear this now. Please send help.
Hey, you okay?
I get it. You're mad at me, and I think I understand why.
Why is that?
Yesterday I stole a bite of broccoli from your lunch, the last piece, and now you're angry.
Well, that makes zero sense to me.
Anyway, the song playing over Neku and Shiki's first interaction is It's So Wonderful, which is the title screen song for the game. The two soon initiate their first fight against an army of Dixie frogs, just like in the game. In this show, Neku just sort of has the ability to conjure up his psyches, unlike the game where you had to collect and select pins to build his moveset. Well, there is one line where Shiki says that Neku does have some other unseen pins on his person, but you know, out of sight, out of mind.
You've got most of the pins. What do I have that you don't?
When Neku does activate a psych, the symbol for its corresponding pin does briefly appear. For this first fight, Neku starts with pyrokinesis before bringing out Shockwave, which has been changed from a hand slash to a kick. Afterwards, he uses Murasame, which has been changed from an uppercut to a psych that allows him to jump real good. And just so I'm not stopping like a dozen times in this video to point them all out as they come up, here are most of the show's pins and psychs. Episode 1 has Thunderbolt, Episode 2 has Red Skull, Lightning Moon, and Fiery Spirit, Spirited Fire. Episode 3 has What's Up Thunder, Ice Blow, Sweet Talk Tether, and Flames Afar, Foes Aflame. Episode 4 has Pop Pendulum. Episode 6 has Frozen Cool, Swift Storm, Swift End, and Crackle Pop Barrier. Episode 8 has Swing Bishop. Episode 9 has Blast Warning and What's Up Voltage. Episode 10 has Thunder Rook and Blizzard Cool. Episode 11 has Carson, Rhyme, and Creepy Weepy Barrier. And episode 12 has Final Fusion. Back to our first fight, the song playing over it is Calling, a popular song from the game's soundtrack. As the fight goes on, the graffiti in the environment displays the show's credits. This is because this sequence replaces the actual opening for this episode. In fact, back when the show was planned to use Teenage City Riot by Ali for the intro theme, that's the song that was supposed to play here. Since we're now in a version of Shibuya at least a decade later than the original game's depiction, there are a few noticeable changes to the city. For one, this train car near the statue of Hachiko was added because it was placed there in the time since the game. Furthermore, the 10-4 building has been altered to use a more updated logo. Except for the version in the 7 Days Bargain, but I'm not gonna spend 10 minutes overthinking it this time, I swear. I'm not going to go over every element of the city that looks like real life, since most of it resembles real life. It is worth noting though that places like Q Floor have been renamed to Q Front, since that's what they're called IRL. For the anime, the team chose to actually get the rights to use the official names for most locations. 10-4 is still 104 instead of 109, not because they didn't get the rights, but because 10-4 is just too iconic to the World Ends With You. In this show, Karya is voiced by Andrew Kishino, which I point out since he's the only person in the English cast to actually reprise their role from the game. The Japanese version was much better fed in this regard. I believe Hanakoma's voice actor was the only one out of the main cast to not come back. Neku and Shiki soon arrive at 10-4, and a little logo for the district briefly appears on screen, just like what would happen every time you enter a new location in the game. The logo is even the same, just with more color. The same can be said for every time that they show a district logo in the show. Look, you can see them all right now on your screen. The mission mail for the second day comes through Beat's black and green cased phone. I find this interesting as Beat uses a red phone in the game, and every other character's phone in the anime does match the color that they originally had. Okay, well, except Izuki, but shush. The mission for this day is to take out some garage wolves. This battle and one later shows us Rhyme's psych for the first time since it wasn't ever seen in the game. She shoots green lasers that can stun enemies.
Please, Neku.
But I have to.
Oh hey, isn't that something? Time for a lore dump. The original game had these orange noise called negative noise that were drawn to any negative energy coming from an RG person. They are back in this show, but are red just like your normal chump noise. Though he doesn't say their names directly, Joshua points out later that there still is a difference between the two.
Well, generally speaking, there are two types of noise. So, there are strays that emerge as a natural product of the negative emotions real ground people give off. Then there's a second kind created by Reapers to erase players in the game.
Also, unlike the game, negative noise now possess people in the UG as well as the RG. That's why we see them get drawn to and possess Neku as he clears the second mission, which definitely doesn't happen in the game. Just to be clear, this video isn't everything that they changed in the animation. I'm not bringing up this difference for the sake of pointing out the difference. I bring this one up since the idea of noise possessing people in the UG is actually brought up as a theoretical concept in the game's secret reports, a collection of lore-filled documents written by Hanekoma. Neku awakes on the third day and we see Shooter and Yammer momentarily walk by. These two are minor characters from the first game. They're both even in the stances from their in-game sprites. I guess that's how they walk around everywhere? Neku then startles Shiki and she goes into this stance, which is a recreation of one of her sprites from the game. I really love how the show integrates these from time to time and how they're all done organically. Let's go over them all real quick here. Kitaniji often puts his hand to his face like in the game. Minamimoto does two of his signature poses in his formal introduction. Neku does what kinda looks like his sad introspective look when talking about Shiki in week 2. Beat also does what kinda looks like his sad look soon after. Episode 8 has Konishi doing her thinking pose and Beat doing his boah pose. And lastly, Beat does his thinking pose at the start of episode 10. The next new noise we meet is a Mosh Grizzly. As Neku and Shiki attack it in unison, they begin to glow. This is called a cross combo and is the combat system that the single-screened versions of the original game used. Each hit raised a sync meter, which Shiki references in her next line.
Wow, you and I totally brought the heat just now. Like the two of us were perfectly synced up.
Futoshi returns from the game as Reaper now, which, while not the biggest change the anime made, is by far the most strange. His outfit is also slightly altered to add the pattern that generic Harrier Reapers wear. There was a lot of thought put into this guy for reasons no mortal will ever know. Thankfully, though, I'm not mortal. So, it's a conspiracy, right? And it all goes back to Kondo. Kondo doesn't want you to know this, but
Pundit?
Uh-oh.
What are you? Get out of here!
But your window was open, and I just—
It's broken! Out! Right. Where were we? Afterwards, we meet 777, head of the Death March band. Yeah, you heard that right. Death March, not Death March. I imagine the reason for this change is to pay homage to the band that the series composer Takaharu Ishimoto made a few years prior called Death March, which in itself was named after Death March. If that's already confusing you, don't worry. Somehow it gets even worse in Neo. As a reward for doing the Futoshi side quest, 777 gives Shiki a level 2 keypin, claiming it to be merch from the concert. A similar event does happen in the game, although it requires Neku and Shiki to do something totally different and gets them real Death March merch as a reward. The other keypin levels can also be spotted throughout the show. Beat uses the level 1 keypin in episode 8 to punch down a wall. Korya gives Neku and Beat the level 4 keypin in episode 9. And Hanekoma hides the level 5 keypin for Neku to find in episode 10. The level 3 keypin is also used by 777 to open a wall in episode 5 and then given to Neku and Beat in episode 8. In the game, this keypin was red, but for the show it was redesigned to orange. The final fight for the first episode is against an army of bats, specifically Gabba bats and Vespertilio Canner. When the bat is erased, it dissolves into static and the camera zooms into it, creating an effect similar to when defeating a boss in the game. Most bosses in the anime recreate this same effect. Finally, we're on to episode 2. The episode opens with a glimpse at Neku's lock screen, which shows that his wallpaper is an art piece by Cat, which is interesting as Neku probably has no clue why he picked that wallpaper. And we finally get to see the show's intro. We're gonna spend a minute here. The song playing is Twister, the main theme from the game. That said, for reasons only Joshua knows, the song Centimeter from Rent a Girlfriend actually fits better than Twister. I'm not playing it here, try it yourself. The opening opens with an overhead shot of Shibuya styled in monochrome. This was an aesthetic often used by the game's promotional art, but was also how the imaginary number plane looked in the game, which was a special battle arena for Pork/Mark City fights. The plane is mentioned later on episode 7 by Joshua, just like in the game, but it doesn't look any different than the Yuji. The opening then introduces us to our 4 main characters and rhyme. Neku's introduction has him taking a photo of the cat mural, which is a photo taken moments before disaster. Just before it transitions away, he even looks to the left, which is the direction that Joshua comes in from. Beat's introductory shot is Spain Hill. There you can see the Mexican dog shop and I and Mina, whose one important scene in both the anime and the game is in this location. Shiki's spotlight has her look into a hip snake store, which is all taped up with cat-branded tape. Okay. Interestingly, there isn't actually a hip snake shop in the game. All of its items are sold through other stores. And yes, I checked. None of these items are actual thread items from the game unless those jeans are like Youth Smart or something. Anyway, this shot represents Shiki's fascination with fashion, but the surface is also reflective, meaning for a brief moment there are 2 Shikis on screen, just like happens later in the story and just like the game's opening. Behind Joshua's spotlight, Soda and Nao can be seen since they are players during his week. Neku runs down what looks like the Miyashita Park underpass and fights off some bats and spiders. The spiders are noise that were not actually in the game at all. There was a scrapped spider boss, but these aren't that. Luckily, the art book was able to give us the official names for these little guys. All noise enemies from the game are named after genres of music, so the spiders are called Spider. Dang, that's underwhelming. Also, one of the grindcore minks shows up for a few frames and Neku freaking one-shots it. That thing is a mini-boss, what? Well, this specific coloring of mink appears a ton on the show, so I guess they chose their basic mink type to be this one for some reason. For the last few frames afterward, posters for 777's concert can be seen, and then Neku runs past some dubbed rhinos. Mr. Mew soon solos some noise, allowing us our first look at the Hardcore Hog and Jungle Boomer. The Swing Shark and Carcinofolk also soon show up as well. Then we get to see fish noise for the first time. Just like the spiders, they weren't in the game, and also just like the spiders, they were creatively named fish. As can be seen later, they used the noise symbol for frogs for some reason. Mr. H's reflection can be seen on the player pins when it comes up since he's their creator. The shot transitions over to the Dead Gods pad with this nifty fish cut. These fish are the fish that swim around underneath the pad's glass floor. And for our final shot, we get another aerial view of the city, this time with angel feathers falling down from the sky to represent the angels watching over the events of the story from the higher plane. If that sentence didn't make any sense, then that might be because it's info from the secret reports, which the anime doesn't really cover in a ton of detail. Now back to the actual episode itself. We see a memory that Neku has no right having of him at the cat art. Similarly to the game, cat's art throughout the show contains the art for the Eden set and a couple of the Darklit planet pins, specifically Black Jupiter, Black Mercury, and Black Mars. Just like in the game, Shiki points out how rare Rhyme's pendant is, which was given her by Beat, but here it's clarified that the pendant was a birthday present. When talking about her brother, the camera frames itself on Beat. Later, Shiki goes to Oogle at the D+B store inside of 10-4, which is in the same location that it is in the game. And this time, the clothes on display are threads from the game. They're the Angelic One Piece and the Vest Blouse combo, although only the Vest Blouse combo is actually from D+B. The One Piece is a natural puppy item. We also get a wider shot of the window and can see D+B's plaid miniskirt paired with Jupiter the Monkeys, Haramitsu, and Amida. This isn't the only time that this happens either. Episode 3 has a Sheep Heavenly store with the Sheep Heavenly polka dot bag on display. The shop is even in the same location as the game. And episode 9 has Hip Snake's Tree Leaf Serenade and Spring Breeze Rhapsody items on display in their store. A cool thing that the English version of the anime added was an integration of characters' battle quotes from the game into their fights here. Here's a quick montage of them.
Why don't you back off? Why don't you back off?
Watch yourself! Watch yourself! Ready to die? Then die!
Ready to die?
Die! You're good as gone! You're good as gone! Focus. Open up your senses.
Focus. Open up your senses.
Follow my lead on this one.
Screw that!
Follow my lead. Screw that.
Predictable.
Predictable.
How's my aim?
How's my aim? You're out of your vector.
Where's your beauty?
Where's your beauty?
Another world awaits.
And you're going.
Another world awaits. You're going.
Come back when you grow a pair.
Come back when you grow a pair.
The beat is on.
Let's bring it. The beat is on. Bring it.
Go. Pick it up.
I'm there. Pick it up, phone. I'm there.
Shred this.
Shred this.
Let's start it up.
No. Let's end it.
Let's start it up. No, let's end it.
Sine, cosine, tangent.
Sine, cosine, tangent.
Vexatious worm. Vexatious worm.
Go, Mr. Mew!
Get him, Piggy.
Go, Mr. Mew!
Sora, look, it's a lucky emblem! Just like in the game, Soda and Now make an early appearance during the next mission, but I want to point it out because unlike the game, their relationship is finally clarified to be romantic. Then, this happens? This is one of those anime original scenes. In this one, Kitaniji totally tries to speedrun his game with Joshua and ended half a month early. We know this is Kitanishi because that's his noise symbol right there. Anyway, Joshua wasn't having any of that. Following Shiki having a Shiki moment, we finally get the real credit sequence. Just like the show itself, it uses a lot of similar poses and imagery from the game. Rhyme's there doing her sad pose, Show in the trash heap is a recreation of this art, Neku's level 1 fusion pose, Shiki's level 1 fusion pose, Beat's attacking pose, Joshua's level 1 fusion pose, Hanakoma's, I don't know what you'd call this one. He does that. We get a shot of the full main cast with the sun rising over them, though Joshua is always kept in shadow while also looking at the rest to foreshadow the ending where he's unable to really join them and can only onlook. Well, the game's ending anyway, this doesn't really happen in the anime. Our last shot shows us the good guys versus the bad guys. There really isn't a correlation between who's looking at who, but Neku being parallel with Kitaniji and Joshua being parallel with Sho is probably intentional. Especially the second, since Joshua and Sho are shown to be parallel in Final Remix's promo art and the 15th anniversary piece. Now for episode 3, which is called Erased. Erased is the name of the game's 4th chapter, which is one of the ones that this episode adapts. At the start of the episode, Soda and Now get stuck in a car accident. I find it noteworthy that the car that killed them looks a lot like the one this guy was driving in episode 1 and the one that kills Beat and Rhyme. Coincidence, or is Karasama here the real villain of the story? You tell me. Beat gets startled by the mission mail and Rhyme comments on how funny his reaction is. It's not a perfect match, but one of the frames of his freakout are similar to one of his shocked sprites. Additionally, Rhyme's comment may be a reference to Another Day, where characters frequently mention how Beat looks like a comic book character when surprised. Rhyme is famously erased here, and the scene plays out shot for shot just like the game. Soul is also name dropped here, just like in the game, and I'd like to shout out Funimation's subtitles for remembering to capitalize it. Okay, this next one's also in the game, and the anime just uses the same line verbatim, but I'm mentioning it now since I only noticed it when rewatching the 3rd episode. Karia says,
"We worked hard this week. On the 7th day we rest."
in a reference to the Book of Genesis, where God rested on the 7th day after spending the previous 6 days setting up the server. I might be reaching with this next one, but the hot dogs served to the two look fairly similar to the sprite from the game. But also, you know, they're hot dogs. I'd be more shocked if they looked wildly different. In the following fight against Higashizawa, Mr. Mew saves Neku from hitting the pavement, and he thanks it by calling it Piggy. This is a reference to the game where there's a running joke that Neku thinks Mr. Mew looks like a pig. I guess in this timeline, Shiki never corrects him, so he just lives life forever thinking that Mr. Mew isn't a cat. Also, when Mr. Mew enlarges, it's similar to how he becomes giant for Neku and Shiki's 3rd tier fusion. Both of these also get called back in the last episode. When we see Higashizawa go stale and become erased, there's an interesting animation detail. When a noise or noise form disappears, it dissolves into static. When a player is erased, they dissolve into balls of light. But when a Reaper, like the scary food man here goes, they dissolve into both. On to the 4th episode and the 2nd week. This episode is called Reapers, just like the 9th chapter of the game. One of the players who enters the game this week is wearing a Musradis hoodie, which was not in their catalog in the game. When fighting the Dub Rhinos, Neku uses the Psyche for the Burning Melon pin. Interestingly, this is the only pin from the show that's not documented on the anime's website. He isn't able to use it to defeat the Dub Rhinos, however, since just like the game, they only take damage from behind. To end the battle, Neku and Joshua perform their level 2 fusion from the game. In the game, fusions have Neku and his partner do a large attack together, but in the anime, they usually consist of the two charging up stronger versions of their own individual psyches. The main exception is Joshua's fusions, which work just like how they do in the game, and Neku states that he's confused as to why he's suddenly more powerful when syncing up with Joshua. Of course, it's because Joshua is the composer. The only other exception to this is Neku and Beat's third tier fusion. Next up, we have not an Easter egg, but this line got added to the English version of the anime, and it's gone underappreciated for far too long.
Why so grim? Someone die?
Haha, you're hilarious.
Joshua takes Neku on an ice cream date, which I point out solely for the fact that Joshua doesn't like ice cream. Well, at least none of the ones they sell in-game. Neither of which seem to be for sale here. But we do get some shots of a different ice cream store, which is selling the crepe and soft serve swirl. The Pegaso store in the next shot surprisingly doesn't use in-game thread items for its clothes, but it is in the same spot as the game. When going to Parco, Neku and Joshua get into an encounter with some Eurobeats boomers just like in the game. They're only able to win the fight with a fusion since, just like in the single screen versions of the game, attacking individually doesn't deal full damage. Oh hey, look, a calendar. Oh no, a calendar! Calendars are like a cheat sheet for finding out the date, so let's work this one out. If I had to make a deduction, I'd say that this calendar represents August 2018. It's a recent enough month where the anime could plausibly take place, and the first day of it is a Wednesday, with its final day being a Friday. Also, it's in the summer. I'm no Japanese cultural expert, and if you are, you're more than welcome to comment and correct me, but I'm pretty sure that short sleeves on the school uniforms means that it can't be January. But like I said, timelining this series is futile. For example, if this really was 2018, the 10-4 logo should really look like this. But whatever. I promised that I wasn't getting trapped in this rabbit hole, so I'm sticking to that. We're moving on. Neku has some flashbacks to his time in the RG, so I'll take now to point out how the animators chose to represent the separation of the planes. From the RG, everything is in full color, but from the UG, only its residents are. The people in the RG appear more muted from the UG. Oh, and since according to the secret reports, noise are from the noise plane, they are in another art style, 3D. I remember when I first watched the show, I was really hoping that when Joshua's true form got revealed, they could keep the trend and have him be like in live action. Would it have looked awful? Yes, but counterpoint, they would have been funny. One punch later and we're at episode 5, and here I want to point out a weird inconsistency in the script for its start. Neku states,
It's a new day, but...
which is incorrect. They didn't adapt that one, silly Neku. Joshua gives Neku the fake mission mail to go to Cat Street just like in the game, and this time we can actually see him write it. When going into Wildcat, Joshua gives Neku a quick rundown of the menu and recommends the house blend, coffee, and pancakes items. He also mentions that donuts aren't bad either, which of the 4 mentioned is Joshua's least favorite in the game. Also, just like in the game, there's a poster inside that I believe is supposed to be of Ken Doi, or at least a reference to Tatsuya Kondo, who he was based on. As far as I can tell, this is the only in-universe reference to Kondo that survived into the animation since Ken Doi isn't a character here. Huge shame, really. Hanakoma holds up Joshua's phone to the camera, and we can see that his wallpaper is the art for his level 1 fusion. And the icon here looks like the one for Shiki's level 1 fusion, though that could just be a coincidence. Also, the error message that gets displayed mimics the style of the game's UI. While Neku gushes about Cat to Cat, we see the Tower Records ad for one of his albums, which must have some pretty serious stuff in it since it has the parental advisory warning. Just like in the game, Hanakoma throws a title drop Neku's way, but unlike the game, Joshua's in the room for it. Joshua, true to his role in Neku's story, attempts to counter Hanakoma's claim and asks what happens if you grow and change for the worse. Hanakoma looks Joshua dead in the eye and says things can always change for the better, as to not so subtly tell him, bro, you better not nuke this city. On the next day, to progress through a wall, Joshua bribes 777 and his band, who are looking for their microphone, which is a much larger ordeal in the game involving betrayal and rejection. The two bandmates here are named Tenho and BJ. While 777 gives a rundown to Neku on where his precious microphone was last seen, a little text bubble appears in the exact style of the game. While Joshua is conversing with them, we can see the stride at the edge of the frame. The stride was a location where you could play a minigame called Tin Pin Slammer in the game, and outside of Shooter and Yammer's background cameos, there's your one morsel of Tin Pin for this show. We see players beyond the wall are fighting Taboo Noise, giving us our first look at the Carcinopunk Death Metal Mink and the Wall of Grizzly. Episode 6 is called Turf, just like the game's 12th chapter, which this episode is unique in the regard that it's pretty much the only day that's adapted here. It's also the best paced episode in the show, and you probably don't need me to tell you that in a perfect world the whole anime would be more like this. After Neku's done accusing Joshua of a murder that he did not commit, the two spy on show making his Taboo Refinery sigil, muttering the phrase,
"Sir, I bear a rhyme excelling in mystic force and magic spelling."
The GM, that's weird. Quiet, he'll spot us.
which is what I believe is called a poem, or a poem used to memorize pi. The number of letters in each word is a digit of pi. At the start of the next day, when thinking about Shiki, Neku says that losing is not an option, which is a line that Shiki could say after finishing a fight in the game. Later on, Neku and Joshua are jumped by a Doom Metal Drake. Interestingly, Drake noise don't actually have their own noise symbol in the game, so the animators gave it one here. The symbol vaguely looks like the one seen when entering a battle in the game. When at Cat Street, we can see into one of the windows and see an album? A stack of papers? A box? A thingy labeled Musanagi, which is the name of one of the Jupiter of the Monkey pins. They even have the same design. This is also about where the Jupiter of the Monkey store is in the game. Joshua tells Neku how separated the underground as a concept is, just like Neku, while this cool framing further illustrates that. Look, they're all like divided. Joshua then goes on to mention other Yujis, specifically name-dropping Shinjuku. Shinjuku's Yuji is given a greater focus in A New Day and Neo, and many thought that this mention was some sort of setup for that. But no, this mention is taken straight from the Japanese version of the game. It was changed for the international release. I imagine that it getting kept here in the English version of the anime though might have something to do with Neo. Maybe. When Joshua pulls out his phone later on, the screen is now fixed after Neku made him drop it and crack the screen earlier. The phone was still cracked at the start of the day, meaning that Hanakoma had to have fixed it when Joshua brought it in soon after. The episode ends with a battle against some trance rhinos. In episode 7, Joshua is able to deduce that the numbers Sho sent as a mission mail on this day were the square root of 5 and cites a mnemonic as the reason why. The mnemonic in question is likely a Japanese one about a parrot crying at the bottom of Mount Fuji. As Joshua explains the root system to Neku, a little map pops up to illustrate what he says. The map is identical to the one in the game. I mean, I know they're both based off a real place, but I mean the lines dividing the district are the same between both. In front of AMX, the two fight a small army of choir frogs, and afterward we see some chaotic core hogs attacking a group of reapers. And this is where I have to stop and report the missing. According to the animation's website, the pin's superfine beam appears somewhere in episode 7, but after watching it over twice, I could not find it. Maybe I'm just being stupid, so if any of you spot it, leave a comment. Otherwise, this pin is MIA. Before we dive into episode 8, let's talk about its thumbnail. The image used on a number of platforms is very clearly not from The World Ends With You. It's actually an image from the 21st episode of Back Arrow. I could not explain to you why it's been years and Funimation has still yet to fix this. And yes, I did watch the whole episode up until this frame appears. You're welcome. And no, I had no idea what was going on. After clearing the first mission in the episode, Neku gives Beat a rundown on exactly how he's getting screwed over this week, and Beat exclaims that Kitaniji is such a snake, an early foreshadowing to his noise form. The two begin to make their way to the Shibuya River, but the way there is guarded by a bebop shark. Beat takes the opportunity to finally prove that sharks will not best him anymore. We cut over to the Dead Gods pad where Kitaniji is coming up with his plan for the week. He looks at his hand and says that the clock is ticking, foreshadowing the timer that Joshua put there. Later, when Konishi strolls up to stuff rhyme into her boobs, she enters from the shadows and a little appearing sound effect plays to foreshadow where she spends most of the week hiding. She does this a few more times throughout the week as well. Later on, Neku and Beat are attacked by a baritone Reaper, as we can see by the color of his hood. This is opposed to a tenor Reaper such as BJ. The anime adds in a real fight against 777, now equipped with item drops from his dead friends. The fight sort of happens in the game, but it's just against a generic Reaper, which I guess it's supposed to be him. Anyway, just like in the game, he's backed up by a number of happy core bats. Here they all converge into the shape of one larger bat, which I think is supposed to be an homage to Terapus Canner. Early into episode 9, we can see a little memorial for Beat and Rhyme, just like in the game. In the last video, I pointed out how cola is one of Beat's favorite drinks and that it was there along with a glass of milk, suggesting that milk may be one of Rhyme's favorite drinks. Here in the animation, however, the milk has been replaced with what I think is supposed to be the OJ item. I imagine this was changed so that they could rep more items from the game, but it also does imply that Rhyme is a fan of orange juice here. The OJ item as it looks in the game is seen later in the episode when Uzuki and Karya take a lunch break. You know, the anime did also change their favorite food from ramen to hot dog, so maybe there's like a theme here. In the next episode, we see a photo of Hanakoma fixing the Taboo Refinery sigil, and it was modeled after the game's art of this same scene. Then we get our possessed Uzuki and Karya fight. During the battle, Neku shoots Uzuki square in the noggin and she begins to bleed. This is the first and only time in the series that we see someone in the UG bleed. Later, Hanakoma's letter warns the players to watch out for shadows. This is, of course, a reference to Konishi. A similar message was delivered to the two just before her boss fight in the game by Kitaniji. In episode 11, Neku and Beat sync up to take control of Noise Rhyme, giving her a new look and making her more powerful. I hereby dub this as their level 4 fusion. Shiki strolls back up and states that Rhyme's entry fee was her dreams. Up until this point, this had never been confirmed. It was the most likely guess, but it took until the anime for her fee to be clarified. During Kitaniji's fight, he finds himself possessed by Noise, drawing a parallel to Neku at the start of the show. This shows how Neku overcame his negative emotions that nearly consumed him 3 weeks prior. Now for the last episode. The episode is called It's a Wonderful World, which is the same name as the series' Japanese title. We finally see Neku's full death play out in more detail, and of course, it's shot for shot like in the game, down to Minamimoto's one line too.
I blew it.
I blew it.
When Neku wakes up after the game, he says,
Why? What the hell?
in reference to this scene's iconic counterpart from the game.
Why?
What the hell? This part of the episode also has a ton of cameos. Aside from the little spotlights on Death March, Soda, and Now, and Eri, as well as the repeat cameos of Shooter, Yammer, and Futoshi, we also see a number of shopkeepers from the game walking around here. We can see Shinta Iwata, Nana Majima, Yumi Shina / Mi Suzuki, Fumi Gotada / Tak Kumura, and Anna Aoi. When Shiki is shown here with her true appearance, her eyes are always kept hidden since the game didn't show them either. We see Makoto and I grabbing some boba together. If you're curious, it most closely resembles the boba milk tea from Neo, though I doubt that's an intentional reference. This shows that these two ended up much better here than the game left them. And in this timeline, 777 actually gets his mic back. The final song played in the show is Underground from the game's soundtrack. What, you thought we were done? This job isn't done unless it's done thoroughly. The show's credits theme is called Carpe Diem and is sung by Asuka. The song and its music video contain a few references to The World Ends With You. First, the song's name means seize the day, and its lyric contains the phrase just hold on to the moment. The music video contains imagery of people running through Shibuya like the players, and Asuka herself sings the song into a megaphone just like our beloved Mathman. The song Teenage City Riot was also composed for the show but was cut last second. The song did eventually get released, and it, along with its music video, contain even more World Ends With You references. For the lyrics, it mentions the Scramble Crossing, noise, muffled voices, reapers, the phrase "It's a wonderful world," surviving, not wasting your time or your life, and headphones. The music video has the lead singer Leo Imamura singing on a stage in front of an audience wearing angel wings. This, of course, represents Neku playing his game in one elaborate performance for the higher plane. Maybe this is the live-action higher plane that I wanted to see all along. One of them even has headphones and another has a lollipop. Let that fuel all your Karya angel theories. The audience is mostly ignorant of him until the singer begins to sing about the lust for life, which is when all the angels begin to pay him attention. Negative attention, that is. It gets to the point where one of them pulls out this thing. This object may look unfamiliar to World Ends With You fans, but it's actually supposed to be a gun. Turns out most guns don't typically look like hair dryers. Who knew? Anyway, he gets shot a lot with the paintball gun, which I want to say represents the alarming frequency of which Neku tends to get shot. Okay, I swear that we are almost done. But the very last thing that I want to do is cover some of the anime's promo art. The official website uses this art of all the good guys facing off against all the bad guys. And at the very top of it is an inversion from A New Day? I don't know why this is here. This is like the only concrete A New Day reference in this show. I'm convinced that they just saw the image in like a final remix trailer or something and thought it looked cool. Now for the art for this second box set. The image shows the main five with 4 of them taking a selfie. Joshua is excluded to show his isolationism. Next, there was this tapestry able to be won in Japan, which contains some unique art. Cheeky and Beat are doing their pose from their level 1 fusions. Joshua's art is based off when he pushes Neku off of Mark City, and Rhymes is based off of a scene from the game where she erases Vespertilio Canner. And lastly, one of my favorite World Ends With You promo images, the original website's background image and current streaming thumbnail. The image shows our main 5 surrounded by noise. Most are just kinda copy-pasted around, but they decided to have one shark noise framed above Rhyme. The coolest part of this art is with the shadows. These foreshadow that these kids are dead and represent all of them in various states of unwellness. Neku, for example, is sprawled out on the ground similar to how he was after Joshua shot him. Cheeky, Joshua, and Beats are all specific references too. Cheeky and Joshua's shadow are based off of their sprites when taking damage, and Beats is based off of his art when Rhyme pushes him out of the way of the shark. As a final detail, all of their shadows have paint splatters on them to represent blood and solidify the death imagery. Well, all of them, except for Joshua. Next time, we'll finish up the series and look through the Easter eggs of Neo: The World Ends With You. But odds are before that, I'll be making a video analyzing one of the characters from the first game. If you want to have a say in who gets a video first, consider supporting BlackJupiter on Patreon to have a vote. Just like Bacon King, Kazer, Nero Jacob Kurotama, and Willpower. If there's anything missed in this video, let me know in the comments, and until next time, goodbye.
Says so.